Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to Start the Week with Spencer. This is Doman International's weekly webinar where we have parents with children with special needs join us from around the world and ask us questions. We're very proud to be the only webinar that we know of around the world that takes questions from parents of special needs on a weekly basis and also answers their hardest unanswered questions. And in that way, we hope to serve all the families with children with developmental challenges around the world. So for today's session, I've got a special guest. Her name is Jordan Ernest. Jordan, let me just start by introducing her. Jordan is a mobility development staff member at Doman International. So she teaches families from around the world how to help their immobile children learn to walk. She also works with children with, diagnosed with autism, ADD, developmental delays, almost every diagnosis that you could imagine. She teaches those families mobility exercises that help develop the brain, that can help with things like speech development, focus, concentration, improving comprehension. So she knows the best mobility activities to do, both for children who are immobile and who can walk and run, but have other challenges. And Jordan is also a member of the respiratory development team at Doman International. So she's one of the rare people in the world who has knowledge in two areas of the Doman Method and coaching families about them. Now, actually, even though her expertise is in those two areas, that's not why I have her on today. We're going to talk specifically about ABA therapy today. This is a topic that we are asked often about at Doman International. What's our opinion on ABA? Can it be helpful for children with special needs? So I've asked Jordan to come on and talk about ABA because it's an area that she is quite knowledgeable in. So I'm going to bring her in now. Hi, Jordan.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Spence.
Thanks so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure. I've been waiting for an invitation. Good to be here.
You're always invited. Come anytime. So, Jordan, maybe before we jump right into the ABA subject, by the way, for everyone who doesn't know, ABA stands for Applied Behavioral Analysis. It's one of the most commonly used therapies around the world for children with autism and other neurodevelopmental challenges in almost every country around the world. So, Jordan, maybe before we jump into ABA, do you mind just telling everyone a little bit about your story? How did you arrive at Doman International? Yeah, how did you get here?
Yeah, it was a nice, happy accident. I started in early childhood education in New Zealand and working with children in early childhood settings and school settings. And I was always drawn to the problem children, quote unquote, or the ones with all the bad behavior or being left behind. And I quickly realized that those were the children diagnosed with special needs, and specifically the children that I was interacting with, they were all diagnosed with autism. So I started my journey into that and seeing what more could be done. I always felt like these kids had so much more potential than they were being able to show, or that was being fostered. And I wanted to find out what to do to help them. And that brought me to ABA, which I very quickly began to despise and grew very frustrated with that. And long story short, I ended up leaving New Zealand and just going traveling to get away from that. And luckily for me, my sister and her boyfriend sent me to Italy, where one of our clinics is. And I thought I was just going to meet my sister's boyfriend's family, and which is Noah, Spencer's younger brother. Noah was my sister's boyfriend, and he sent me to Italy to go and meet his family and see what they were doing. And lo and behold, I stumbled into the online course, but it wasn't the online course, it was live. And the first 30 minutes of that course, I knew that I'd finally found the answer that I knew was out there. I knew there had to be a different way of supporting and fostering these children that was not barbaric and not ABA. And I just knew immediately. Yeah.
Yeah, you
And
didn't know we were all colluding to get you on the team.
I had no idea. Absolutely no idea. I thought I was just visiting you guys, and I thought you guys were a little weird.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that was weird family, but then I got it. And you know what? I realized that the only reason I thought you guys were weird was because everything you were saying was the complete opposite to the mainstream and to everything that I'd learned through what I'd done thus far. And it was the element that was always missing for me. It was that respect and realization that these kids do understand and that they can do so much more, and that you don't have to use behavior therapies to mold them and to change them, but that we can help them become who they're supposed to be through different avenues. And you're not weird, just different. And yeah.
Weird, but good weird.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So tell us a bit about your training and experience in ABA, maybe before we get into opinions on it. Like, what did you, because you and I both have a lot of opinions on it. But yeah, what was your training like? What was your kind of practical experience?
Yeah. Well, look, ABA is based on this concept that behaviors, rewarded behaviors, will come to fruition and become the norm, and that behaviors that you don't want, if you ignore them, or it's positive reinforcement. It's rewarding what you want to see and ignoring the rest, or in some cases punishing. And that is the whole kind of feeling that I had throughout my whole journey with ABA, and it always felt just yuck and horrible. And it was about manipulating and using social interaction and wants and needs to kind of force children to behave in the way that you want them to behave. And that became very clear to me very early on. And it was really hard. I don't like to think about that training because it was a really hard time. I just thought, oh, I'm too sensitive. Oh, I don't really know, because I wasn't the expert. These guys were the experts. And it was very disheartening and frustrating. And I absolutely hated it, which is why, especially doing practicums as well, sitting in with these ABA therapists and watching them interact with children. It was heartbreaking.
Yeah, I had a very upsetting experience when I was doing my master's in early childhood education. I was kind of given the assignment to attend some kind of early childhood therapy that I didn't know about. And so I chose ABA. I went to a small like preschool in the Philadelphia area where they were doing ABA with kids. And I walked into the classroom and there were probably 6 kids there. They were all maybe 3, 4 years of age, all been diagnosed with autism. And it was deeply upsetting because the children were, I found, either to be very hyperactive, which now this has nothing to do with ABA per se, but the children were either very hyperactive and kind of bouncing off the walls, upset, nervous, or very subdued, kind of like, I'm just gonna make it through the day, which is something you never want to see in a 4-year-old child. Kind of like, I'm here to survive.
Completely closed in. Yeah,
Closed
exactly.
in. Yeah, right.
Survive.
In a shell. And there was a girl there. I'll never forget her. For the rest of my life. she was so hyperactive and she was screaming the whole time. She was so deeply upset. And I watched them as, one at a time, they would take the kid and they would do kind of like a private ABA session with them, and then they'd return them to the group. And the ABA activities were incredibly repetitive. It was the kind of thing where some pictures were laid out in front of the child, and the child was told, give me the picture of the apple, that kind of thing. And, the therapist that was there said that the children had to complete that activity, like picking up the apple card a certain number of times to level up to the next activity. So it's like, if you pick the apple 5 times in a row correctly, then you get to pick the banana card.
Oh, yay.
Yeah. And it's almost like, I almost thought from the child's perspective, well, what's in it for me to keep picking the apple card if all I'm going to have to do is pick the banana card afterwards? That's my reward.
Yeah.
Some of the kids were really trying, to their credit. They really wanted to please the teachers, but the children were being, the therapist would use the term rewarded. I would call it more of bribery.
Absolutely. 100%.
Where they were being bribed with M&Ms and cookies. And they were correct with things. And of course, for these children, the last thing they ever should be eating are M&Ms and cookies. Right. And then I was like, oh,
besides the point, but yeah.
Exactly. I mean, this is why these kids are screaming and upset.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that was my 4-hour or so experience with ABA. That was enough for me to be like, this isn't for us.
It's excruciating. Yeah.
What were some of your observations and experiences?
Exactly the same, and it was so obvious to me. It's like you're not helping these children to learn how to do whatever you want them to do, right? Like identify images or unscrew and screw something and pour themselves water. You're not teaching them how to do those skills. You're teaching them to do what you want them to do, and to only to kind of push down what they have as their impulses and their wants and their needs, and to adhere to whatever is being told for them to do. They're being shown how to mask, which is a new term that's come out lately, which I absolutely love, because that's so perfect for it. It's not helping them to fix the cause or the issue that they're facing. It's teaching them to mask and hide those things. And inherently, it's telling these children that everything about you is wrong and not acceptable. And I don't want to see that. And I'm going to either ignore you if you act any differently, or I'm going to tell you how bad you were. And that was just horrific. Remember the first time I encountered this, it was before I even heard of ABA before. It was in the center I'd been working at, early childhood center, for 3 years, and there was a little boy, Kian, who was the first autistic child diagnosed that I'd ever encountered. And I knew how smart Kian was, and I knew everything he was capable of. So to see this person come in and say, oh, he doesn't understand and he can't do X, Y, Z, and then sit there and force him to do these things that he was very capable of, but because he wasn't doing them on command, that automatically was, he can't do them, and we just need to work harder. We need to push him even harder. And I knew Ken very well, and I could see how upset he was and how distressed he was, and it was just heartbreaking, horrible.
Yeah, and many children, when you work with kids and you evaluate them, it's very typical for them, if they don't enjoy the game you're trying to convince them to play, they will create their own game that is more interesting to them. And sometimes that game is playing with you. And very often,
humoring as well. Yeah.
Say again.
They're humoring you. They
They could be humoring you, or they can play games with you, like tease you, answer things incorrectly.
Exactly. Yeah.
And you don't have to work with kids for very long to realize that they'll do this, right? And but there didn't really seem to be any, at least with my observation with ABA, any room for that, right? It wasn't like, oh, this kid knows what the apple is and he's just playing games with us, let's move on. It was like, no, he has to answer it 5 times correctly in a row or we're not moving on.
It's so harsh, and it's such a stark contrast to how we interact with other children, or how everyone interacts with children. It's giving them grace and leaning into humor and play and following their interests. But for these kids who I could tell are just so much smarter than anyone even realizes, they don't get any of that. And it's just drilling until they do what you want. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, success, we've done it. You're moving up a level. You've done the ABA perfectly. It's working. But it's not. It's
And
anyway.
When I went to this school, I have to say the therapists that were there and the teachers were not happy. They weren't. You could tell that they were very stressed. And by the way, they were in a very stressful circumstance. And you could tell they were like, they didn't feel they were making a huge change in the kids' lives. And that was very upsetting for them. They were just operating off of what they had been taught. They meant well.
No, yeah, exactly.
They really cared about the children, which made it even worse for them.
Which is exactly what happened to me. It's like I had that horrible experience with Kian, but I still pursued it because there's nothing else out there. Well, obviously we are out there, right? But at that time, it's autism, ABA. You have an autistic child, you do ABA. So I if that's the standard and the only thing out there, I still pursued it, even though I had such a horrific experience with it off the bat. And I'm sure it's the same for a lot, if not all, maybe the majority of other ABA therapists and parents too. It's like until you know different, that's all you know and that's all you do. And if that's the standard, you're gonna just keep at it and keep doing it and hope that and put trust in the people who have said that this is the standard. And that was the trap that I got into, and I couldn't take it anymore, which is why I just left and luckily stumbled on Doman International.
The inspiration for my next question, we have a comment here from Haley, which I wanted to ask you something in this regard. So Haley says, all of my personal therapists for my son basically said ABA would ruin him, and we are in Colorado. And so I have a call maybe once a month with a different family where a family will tell me something like, Spencer, it's so weird. My son was doing great. They started the Doman Method 3 months ago. Oh, he's getting better. He's better focused, speaking more, better behavior. And they say, 3 weeks ago, something weird happened. Like he started to regress. His behavior got worse. He started speaking less. He's so much more anxious and hyperactive. And I'll say to the parents, well, what changed? Did something change in his schedule? Or, is he getting some new supplement? Or what changed? And they'll say, oh, we restarted the ABA classes, the ABA sessions. And he's so stressed. He gets upset when I bring him to the session. And for these kids, children diagnosed with autism, when they are put in a state of fight or flight where they're incredibly stressed, it's detrimental for them.
Absolutely.
It's detrimental for their learning ability. It's really bad for their behavior. I was wondering, have you seen that as well? Have you seen that some kids are actually hurt from it?
Every kid that I've encountered or heard about has been harmed. And to your point, these children diagnosed with autism or people with brain injury, they have issues with senses, right? And when your sensory perception is not working well, it means that you can't regulate yourself, and that also it's your emotions. You can't emotionally regulate yourself or even develop that ability, and it just makes you so much more sensitive to everything, not just sensory perception, but words and actions, and not being able to do this or that, or being forced to do this and that. And that's exactly why this is so detrimental and so harmful. I've had a conversation with an adult who did what would be called ABA as a child, and they were mild, they would say, for autism. And they, initially it was a success story of, oh yes, I started talking more, and I assimilated into school, and I got through school, and I was a perfectly functioning adult, and I did great. But I'm stressed and anxious, I'm depressed, I have an eating disorder, all of these things that they directly related to their time with ABA, which taught them to put on that mask and push down their feelings and do what was expected of them by everybody else, and not even listen to their own needs and wants. And yeah.
It's
hurtful.
interesting because one of the most common criticisms of the Doman method is because we recommend doing specific activities with frequency. There have been some people who have criticized it, saying, "Oh, you're just drilling kids. You're drilling them to do the same thing over and over again." I heard someone use the term "drill and kill." Kind of like drill a child so much that you kill their love of like learning and doing things. And with the Doman method, joy, every time we teach an activity to a parent, we say joy is essential, because a child needs to be relaxed and joyful to learn.
Absolutely. Exactly.
Or anxious, their learning capacity shut down. And most of our teaching activities, for example, are passive for the child. They get to sit there and watch and learn in enjoyment. But what I found so ironic is that attack is often levied at us. But I found that's exactly what ABA was.
100%. Yeah, drill and kill. I thought that's the perfect term for ABA therapy. Yeah.
Wild. What are some of the differences that since you have a background both in ABA and the Doman method, what are some of the differences you've noted between the two?
Well, the main difference is what we're treating, right? ABA and most traditional therapies are focused on symptoms, individual symptoms, usually behavior therapy, speech therapy, physical therapy. And yes, treating a symptom can have some progress and some wins, but it's only going to get you so far. And as we've talked about already with ABA, you get so far because you're teaching the child to suppress things, right? And to ignore impulses and to act the way that they should act. Whereas we treat the cause, right? We're all about neuroplasticity, growing the brain, healing the brain, developing an undeveloped brain. And that's where all these symptoms of autism is coming from. So instead of focusing on and treating the symptoms or the behaviors that are unwanted, we treat the cause of those symptoms so that they lessen and disappear. That's the biggest thing.
Well, and I don't say this to be mean-spirited or try to be controversial, but I can see a ton of similarities between ABA and dog training. I've learned a lot about dog training over the last couple of years, having a dog, and it's pretty clear, right? If you give the dog an instruction, and if they do it, they get an edible treat, and you just reinforce that way. And then, and that just, I felt like I saw the exact same thing in the ABA session.
As far as I'm concerned, it is. To its core, it is. And sometimes there are other elements that people may claim, oh, but it's not that because we do X, Y, Z. But when it comes down to it, it is. And it's not just the rewarding with food, right? It's positive reinforcement. And I'm sure a lot of people have heard the term positive reinforcement, and that goes a long way. But when it's the only thing that you're using and you're drilling and you're ignoring or withholding something when you don't get the result you need, you're breaking those people down and sending them further into themselves. And it's barbaric.
It can be, from the child standpoint, it's insulting, you know?
And
Like,
patronizing.
let's think about it as adults.
Mm,
Imagine for a second you walk in with a therapist, and the therapist tells you every time you do something, you're gonna get something in return. Um, it's so transactional. Like,
yeah,
we don't act that way with people we care about. We collaborate and work together, and we support each other, and
yeah,
we understand sometimes someone needs more help than someone else, and that's okay.
yeah.
But we don't
We
do
show
something
compassion.
always for an immediate reward.
Yeah.
And by
But
the
all
way, I think very often these children desire something more than an M&M. They want the attention
connection,
of a
compassion.
yeah, they want
Yeah.
the love and attention and
Hmm.
of an adult who cares about
Yeah,
them.
exactly. And the other point of that too is, I mean, we know this from the hundreds of kids that we work with, but sometimes your brain doesn't do what you want it to do, and kids are trying to do these things that they need to or want to, like speaking. They know how to say everything, but it's really hard for them to organize themselves together to get the speech out. And so if you think about that aspect of, I'm trying really hard and I want to do what you're asking me to, but my brain is not letting me. And then you put that with ABA therapy of being punished, like there's no compassion there, there's no understanding, and the child's just as frustrated at themselves. And you're not helping, you're just making them feel worse and worse. And that's where you get this, I'm so dumb, I'm so stupid, why can't I just do what I'm supposed to do? But that's not what this is. It's not a lack of will or want. It's that your brain is not working the way that it should. And that's the
Mhm.
difference. We're helping the brain to do what it needs to do and what it should be doing, so that those things can be done easily and willingly and when they're wanted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I have to say, the vast majority of the time when I talk to families who have come to Doman International, they intuitively know this from their experience with ABA. I
Yeah.
can literally, I know because when families start on our program, and you know this too, Jordan, because
Mm.
you have the same conversation. We'll usually say to parents, "Okay, are you currently doing any other therapies or treatments?" Right? And then if a family tells me ABA, and I say to them, well, look, our recommendation would be, of course, we can't force you to do anything, but our recommendation would be to kind of put aside that for a while and focus on the Doman method. I can literally, of the hundreds or thousands of parents I've said that to, probably two have ever told me ABA
Yeah.
helps my kid, and I've
Mhm.
seen results. And with those families, I say, okay, if you see results and it
Yeah.
helps your child, then you're okay, fine, keep going. Um, Even a broken clock will be right twice a day, right?
Yeah, there you go.
Um,
Yeah.
but the vast majority of parents are like, oh, we can give that up, thank God. Thank
Yeah,
you
yeah,
so
yeah.
much.
And that
Yeah.
that really comes down to the trust your gut thing that we're so set on, right? Like, always listen to mothers and to parents. Like, your children better than anyone in the world. And a similar thing. I feel like when someone asks me that, what do you think about ABA, or should we keep doing ABA? They wouldn't be asking if they thought that it was the answer and that they felt good about it. They would have been saying, we're still doing this because of XYZ. So it's very much a, parents should trust their gut and understand and know why something is working. And it's the same reason I still pursued it, even when I felt like this is horrible, because I said to myself, I'm not the expert. I don't know these things. So I have to just trust that this is the standard and that this is correct and right. And I'm sure that's something that every single parent feels. Yeah.
Yeah.
But they should just trust their guts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think there's an innate human trait for most people that
Hmm.
we would rather do the conventional thing, which everyone is doing, than, even if we know it's probably
Hmm.
not going to go well, then do the unconventional thing
Yeah.
that is maybe we perceive as more risky, or we're afraid if it won't work, we'll be criticized or mocked.
Yeah.
It's hard to do the unconventional thing. It takes
So hard.
courage, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
We fear what is different and what is perceived as Weird, yeah, which is why I thought, you know, when I met all of you the first time, I was like, "Oh, weird, weirdos," but it's only because you were different and unknown, but like I said, the first 30 minutes of the course, I was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, this is it," because the first part of the course is explaining how brain growth and development works and brain injury and how brain injury causes a lack of development and causes all of the symptoms that you see in autism and every other special needs. And that's empowering, and it gives you the information that you need to know. This is the answer. It's not do this, do this, do this. And I'm the expert and I'm telling you what to do. We're giving you the behind the scenes. We're giving you the information and the context, and it just makes sense. I'm very biased, but it makes sense. What we do, it makes so much sense, and it works. Also biased.
Well, if you can stick around for a little while longer, Jordan, I'd love to take questions from the audience. Does that work for you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, great. Great. I'll also take this moment to add Colleen Hudson. Hi, Colleen.
Hi.
Colleen is our Director of Representatives. All right, so let's see. We've got a few questions, comments here. So we've got a comment here from Ashley, who's saying she's excited Callie will be starting in February. Great. It's going to be great to meet you, Ashley. That's wonderful. All right, we've got a bunch of questions on Instagram. We've got a comment from Sarah who says the opposite of the mainstream is always the answer. I often find that's right. Annabella says, I stopped and ended that therapy when they tried to eliminate stereotyped behaviors and movements without even understanding why my daughter did them. It seemed like a science of elimination. Yeah, that's a great comment. Okay. Ashley says, would love your perspective on sign language. Hesitant to just say my 8-month-old son with Down syndrome will have to use it. Well, Ashley, I mean, I'll take the sign language question. So I'll tell you the positive thing about sign language, and then I'll tell you the reason why we don't usually teach it as part of the Doman method. So the thing I really like about sign language is the intuition of the people that use it is that children with special needs are far more intelligent than they're able to express. And that's what I like about sign language, because it comes from this realization of they can't talk, or they can't talk much, and they're smart. So we've got to give them a way to communicate. So in that sense, you know, I think it comes from a wonderful background. The reason why we don't usually use it with our kids is just because, you know, children will nearly always do what is easiest to them, or what they become habituated to doing. And so a lot of children, when they learn sign language, they stick with it. And sometimes they don't learn to speak, or they don't speak as much. So we use other forms of communication because we agree that children have a lot more to say than they are able to. So we have a program called the Choice Board, which we use, which is a communication board for kids, even who cannot talk. It's a wonderful tool. But unlike sign language, the Choice Board, you know, when parents have a question for the child, they can pull it out, they can ask the child can give an answer, but it doesn't have the same dependency issue that can be formed with sign language. By the way, the Choice Board we talk a little bit about it in the book, The Doman Method from Special Needs to Wellness. I'll do a shameless plug of the book and hold it up here, The Doman Method from Special Needs to Wellness. And then we also have the book Answering Autism, where we also discuss the Choice Board as well. So yeah, Jordan, any other additional thoughts about sign language?
It can also be very limiting as well. As the question started out, my son has Down syndrome, so he's not going to talk, so you should do sign language. That's so limiting, and that could quash any potential that they have that they do have for being able to talk anyway, and it can become such a crutch as well.
Yeah, and I should have said in the beginning, with the program, what we're trying to do is obviously treat the root cause issue, which is in the brain. And when we do that, the symptoms start to go away, including helping the child beginning to speak. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, our ultimate goal, of course, is to help a child speak so that they can communicate whatever they want. And we've been working with kids with Down syndrome for almost 70 years now. All right, let's see what other questions we've got here. All right, Sandra is asking, what do you think about the new concept of naturalistic ABA? It's now making through play, and kids enjoy it, and results are measurable, and reinforcements are even unknown. It's not like the old type of ABA. Okay, this is something new to me. Have you ever heard of it before, Jordan? Naturalistic ABA?
No, I've been out of the game and ignoring ABA for a while, so no. So, but I'm glad to hear. I mean, I wish it wasn't a practice, but it is a practice. So I'm glad to hear that they're at least respecting, following play. That's such a big foundation of any child psychology in general, right? It's interest and play. So at least they're incorporating that now, seemingly.
Yeah, and probably that's a response to the failures of ABA.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, I'm skeptically open. If that's a term, not knowing anything about it, but I'm always open to learning something.
My feeling is too, though, that the importance of play and the importance of play is that it is directed by the child. That is a huge part of why play is so important in child development in general. And assuming that the concept of ABA of reinforcing what you want to see and discouraging or ignoring what you don't want to see, combining that with play doesn't sound great either, because then you're kind of robbing them of what they should be getting out of self-directed play. And it could be, and I'm assuming here because I really don't know what that looks like, but it's kind of controlling them and showing them this is how you should be playing and this is how you should be discovering and learning. And that's not good either. Yeah.
Well, there's a good question here, which I think is a good conversation starter, which is, I'm just going to share it. It's from Instagram. So one parent asked, then how do you get a child to do non-preferred activities without having to look forward to something? So in other words, rewarding, I think this parent's asking so are we saying you should never reward a child?
Or are they saying, how do you get them to do these things that they should be doing, but they don't want to? Right? But
without a reward.
Without a reward. Yeah. You have to look at why. Why do they not want to write or speak or do what you're asking them to do? And with the kids we work with, right, Spencer, all of these children, there's always a reason. It's I'm auditorily hypersensitive, and so I don't want to do this, or I don't like to touch that texture, so I don't want to put my socks on by myself, even though I can, or I don't want to open this thing, and it's really hard for me because of my vision. So it should be looking into why, which is the whole point of what we do, right? Looking for the cause. And when you can heal and improve and hopefully eliminate the cause of their unwillingness to do something, then they're just going to do it anyway. And getting them to do it by bribing is not the answer. That's just teaching them to not overcome. It's teaching them to push through and just do it anyway because I've got this reward for you.
Right, exactly. And I don't want anyone to walk away from this thinking that we're not saying don't have rewards for children.
No.
That's not what we're saying. In fact, what I saw with ABA my bigger problems with it were, number one, the reward itself wasn't beneficial for the child, right? It was like, we're going to give a candy, an unhealthy thing to the child that's going to be harmful in its own right for the kid.
And in a patronizing way as well.
Exactly, very patronizing. And then, and sometimes people ask me, well, what's the difference between a reward and a bribe? My personal way of explaining it is, a reward is, first of all, something which is positive for the person, that is agreed upon in advance. Okay.
Yeah.
As opposed to a bribe where the person, so with a reward, parents, right, will say, okay, if we're able to get these things done in today, we get to go to the park, right? Or that we get to go and see your friend John or something like that. Okay, that's a nice reward. But a bribe, on the other hand, is when the child is kind of dictating what they'll do for something, right? And sometimes parents will be in that situation where they'll say to the child, okay, let's go and do this. And the child will say, I'll only do that if you give me this. That's a bribe, right?
Yeah.
It's like a politician saying, I'll only do this for you if you give me the money, that kind of thing. And it's just an unhealthy dynamic to be in. And yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I feel like too, it's how you present it as well. It shouldn't be me against you, and you do this or I won't give you X, or if you do this, I'll give you this thing that you love. It shouldn't be that way. It should be a shared goal that you're working towards, which helps when children are struggling, right? Like if you've agreed we're going to go to the park and then they just can't get it done, they're just too they're struggling with it, you can offer them compassion instead of saying, just do it. If you don't, we can't go to the park. It's right. I know this is really hard for you. I know you're tired. I know you're overstimulated. I'd really love for us to go to the park too. So let's just get it done together. Let me help you. It's teaching them the benefit of having to do things that we don't always want to do, and having to work hard sometimes to earn things that are rewarding. It gives a sense of accomplishment and achievement, and self-worth as well, because it doesn't feel good to get a bribe sometimes, most of the time. I don't know. I haven't been bribed.
And by the way, if they're threatening the kid, if you don't do this, you're not going to get this. Now we're blackmailing.
Absolutely,
right? So,
yeah. That's not the relationship.
Bribing or blackmailing. Colleen, I see you've thrown a quote into the chat. Do you mind reading it off for everyone and then maybe giving your interpretation of it?
Sure. This is from a chapter in What to Do About Your Brain Injured Child, called On Motivation. And Glenn says, thus we have the formula: success, which leads us to reward, which leads to motivation, which leads to her actually wanting wanting to do it again and looking forward to doing it again. So I think the whole point is exactly what you were just talking about, that the accomplishment of the thing that is a little difficult leads us to the feeling that, oh, I did that, and I get to go to the park, and we're all on the same page together.
Fostering all of those things that fosters hard work, determination.
Because it's not innate. I think that's something that for parents to understand. It's hard for parents maybe who, you have a little kid, maybe your life hasn't been around little kids, and now you have a child, and of course you love them more than anything, but learning how to relate to children in a way that they respond to, that doesn't make you feel like you're forcing them or bribing them, it's tricky. It's not natural.
It can feel impossible.
A lot of thought and a lot of consideration. I think, as you said, Jordan, if you come always from a position of compassion and saying, all right, the things that we're doing are important for you. They're vital for your life. So we're going to do them, but I'm with you doing them. I'm not standing over you.
Not standing over you. Yeah, exactly. Or making you repeat the action until you do it, and then I give you an M&M.
Yeah,
exactly.
Exactly. Yeah. It's important to know, like, we're all in this together. I'm with you. I can't do it for you. I can't do everything for you your whole life. That's not what I'm here for as a parent, to do everything for you your whole life, but I can help you to learn how to do it. And it's going to take time, and it's okay, because we'll get there.
Yeah. Exactly. It fosters that relationship too. And a big thing that I've heard from a lot of parents post ABA is the behavior, right? Like, gosh, now they're just so much more badly behaved, and they're aggressive, and they're upset all the time.
One of the most common things I hear. Yeah. My child's behavior has gotten
absolutely worse. Yeah. And like, of course, anyone's gonna be so angry and frustrated and divisive and just horrible if they're being treated like that and misunderstood, and there's no compassion, there's no motivation, there's no understanding, and there's no respect of their actual understanding. It's just, you're a dog and I need you to do this, and if you don't do it, nothing. If you do it, M&M and a patronizing congratulations.
I would like to mention, because I know that there are parents who have said to me, well, my kid seems to do well. We've done both. Actually, I see there's a comment about that.
I'll pull that up while you're there's a comment about, is it okay to do the Doman Method and ABA simultaneously? I
think, and here I'm going to be very, very real as a mom. My daughter's 20 now, but I'm still a mom, and things still come up. I am a people pleaser. I always have been. And my daughter is a people pleaser and always has been. She really, and we have a very close relationship, and I know that she wants to please me and make me happy. And just being aware of that, and being aware of that in myself too. Like, I can think back to things in my childhood. No parent is perfect, and we're all just doing the best that we can. But there were definitely times when I would not be doing everything in as pure a way, like, because sometimes you just got to get it done,
Absolutely.
And so I can definitely think back on times when I maybe was a little more coercive than I like to be, and luckily that wasn't the norm, but I can definitely be honest and say, yeah, there were times when I took advantage of the fact that I knew my kid wanted to make me happy. And I know that my mother did that too, because we've talked about that. I was the easy one, but I have other siblings and they were not. So I think that, just being aware of that too, sometimes it's hard to acknowledge that, like, yeah, maybe my kid is doing things that, like, as long as I've got that I've got to handle it, like, wow, I really kind of railroaded you into that the other day. That was not cool. I need to not do that to you. It's not fair,
Yeah, that's all you need to undo and go back. And people pleasing too. I feel like ABA really fosters people pleasers, which can be so detrimental. And it's teaching you, especially with someone with autism, right, who's being overwhelmed auditorily, visually, tactilely. It's teaching them, suppress that, ignore that. What you're feeling right now doesn't matter. Yeah, you're overstimulated, but I don't care about that. I need you to do this. And that's creating the ultimate people pleaser who never learns to listen to themselves or to know what they need. And when you can't do that, you can't emotionally regulate yourself. And what kind of an adult, we don't want those kinds of adults, right? And I feel like it just, from such a precious age of development, it just putting that programming in at such an early, delicate stage is just so scary and damaging.
I'm sorry.
Well, I just wanted to say that there are a bunch of parents in the chat, especially on Instagram, who are saying that, kind of asking, can the Doman Method and ABA be done simultaneously? And some parents saying actually that they are doing both simultaneously. And so what I would say is, and almost every family that comes to Doman International's clinic, I ask them this question. I say, okay, number one, is it helping your child? Right? That's the most important question. If the answer is no, then I would say I'd recommend you stop. Second question is it the best use of your time? Right? And then third, of course, is it safe? Is it not harming your child in any way? And listen, there are families who tell me this has helped my kid. Like, we found the right person. They, very often it's someone who's kind of, maybe they've learned from mistakes in the past and they do things in their own way. They're a very talented therapist. And so I'm
Absolutely.
not going to tell a family if something's truly helping their child and it's not harming their kid. I won't tell them you have to stop. Of course not.
I don't think we do. And
No.
what I find, Spencer, too, is it's once parents start, like, they do the course, they read the books, and they start understanding where symptoms are coming from, they often come to the conclusion on their own, oh, this is not helping because I know that this stim is because of this. So doing this in ABA is not going to help. It's just it might improve and stop them from doing that, but it's only because it's teaching them to suppress it or do it at times where they're not being seen. And so what I say when people ask me this is, understand what you're trying to fix. So what are you working on in ABA? What are the things that you're hoping ABA is going to help and heal? And then, do you really understand where those things are coming from? And I find that once you help their parents to see exactly why those symptoms are occurring, they very clearly see, oh, okay, this is not going to work. But if they do, like you said, if parents feel like it's helping, absolutely, you should do whatever you think is best for your kid.
Well, we've got a question here, which I like, which is, okay, what is the Doman version of ABA? What is it called? And where can I get more information on it? So that's a great question. So, I'll turn this over to you, Colleen, in a second. But if you're completely new to the Doman method, if your child has an autism diagnosis, I would recommend get the book Answering Autism. But I wrote this with my dad, Douglas. You can find it on Amazon. If you put Answering Autism Doman, you'll find it. If your child has some other diagnosis besides autism, I'd recommend this one, The Doman Method from Special Needs to Wellness. You can start to learn about our work here. And then, of course, the Doman International Clinic, we see families in 10 different locations around the world. I'll turn it over to you, Colleen. Do you mind just telling everyone a little bit about that?
Yeah.
What it's like to come to DI, and then how they can get in contact with you if they're interested in learning more.
Absolutely, yes. So, if your native language is anything other than English, we do have resources in Spanish, Russian, Italian, Serbian, and we even have our initial lectures translated into Arabic. We don't have Arabic translation support, but we have that information for you anyway. And we can, get started with you pretty much as soon as you like. Our offices are just outside of Philadelphia, and that's where we see families throughout the year. We also see families in Italy. We have a campus in Tuscany, a beautiful campus. We see them in Serbia. We're going to be in Australia and New Zealand. We will also be in Miami, seeing families there. We're in California twice a year. So getting started with the Doman Method is as easy as reaching out to me. I'm the first person. My email address is info, INFO, @domaninternational.org. And my phone number is 814-232-8668. That is a US number, so it's +1 country code. But you can send us a DM in Instagram. That's probably the quickest way, or Facebook, and I will respond to you personally, and we can get started. But the book will explain the Doman Method, but we can have a call about your child specifically, because there is no one-size-fits-all with the Doman Method. That's why we work individually with families to get the right fit for your child. So please reach out to us and we'll go from there.
Yeah, and a couple of parents have asked, and unfortunately we're out of time, so we wouldn't be able to get to it too much today. But some parents have asked, okay, well, what is the Doman Method like in the comments? What I would say is, first of all, we do this webinar every week. So, keep joining. And today we really wanted to focus on ABA, but we take questions here every week. get the Doman Method book, get in touch with Colleen, and we'll help answer any questions that you have. Colleen, I just wanted to put your number into the chat for people.
Also, there are a few, we have a lot of videos on YouTube. It can be a little overwhelming, but there's one that's pretty short that I send to a lot of families. I think it's called, like, What is the Doman Method? And it's about 4 minutes. Spencer, you made it a few years back. Yes, that is my number.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, it's a really great, like, short explanation of what's the Doman Method, why does it work, why is it different, and it's a great primer for people who are thinking, what is this? What's the basis?
Yeah.
And I just put up Colleen's email address. Well, Jordan and Colleen, thanks so much for joining me. Jordan and I currently are in our clinic. So Jordan took some time out of her busy day to join me. Thanks a lot, Jordan. Thanks for taking our questions. And maybe next time you can come on and we can talk about mobility development.
Yes, my area.
I do want to say, folks, there's no obligation if you reach out to me and you want answers. It's not like I'm, just please, we have the information for you. So don't be shy.
Yeah. Colleen's very nice.
Thanks.
All right. Everyone, have a really good rest of your week, and we'll see you back here next week. Bye-bye.
Thank you.